that it essentially is violative of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. The second part that this judgment will answer is whether the EWS reservation is valid, even though it excludes scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward classes and socially and economically backward classes from its scope. And also something that will be watched out for is whether states can provide reservations to people in private educational institutions which does not receive government aid. Mr. Kothari back with us on the phone line. Mr. Kothari, let's go through what we're expecting, from the lens of the three big questions that the Supreme Court will be answering. Beginning, of course, with the fact as to whether reservations can be granted solely on the basis of economic criteria, whether the 103rd Amendment is actually violative of the basic principles of the Constitution. What are your thoughts on that? Mr. Kothari, are you there with us?
I'm there. You can patch me online.
All right. Mr. Kothari, we're going to come across to you on Zoom very shortly. But as I was saying...
No, I'm there. I can see you.
All right. Thank you. I was asking you, let's go through this point by point. The big questions that are going to be answered are three in number. Going with the first one, is it violative of the basic principles that are enshrined in the Constitution? What are your thoughts on that?
The short answer to that is no, it is not violative of the basic structure of the Constitution, because that was one of the biggest challenges, and that is, for the benefit of the viewers, I'll try to simplify this as much as possible. The basic structure of the Constitution is judicial review, bicameral legislature, parliamentary form of government, fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy. So whenever an amendment is passed by both the houses of the parliament, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, or if there is a presidential ordinance, the first thing that the courts look at is that whether it violates the basic structure of the Constitution. That is the first thing that it comes into the mind of the court. And unless it's a very simple amendment and where there is no question of any basic structure or anything of that sort. So that is the first aspect. Now, that is in fact, which is your very first question, that does it violate? Because does it violate basically the equality clause? Equality clause is Article 14, which is fundamental right, which is the most sacrosanct fundamental right under our Constitution, apart from the freedoms that we enjoy under Article 19. So Article 14, which promises equality, and when I say that 10% reservation should be there for the economically weaker sections of the society, that means, am I violating equality? And in essence, also, am I violating the former Supreme Court judgment, which is a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court in the Mandal Commission case, which is famously called as Mandal Commission, but actually it was Indira Sawhney versus Union of India. Now, for example, today's judgment will be called as the EWS judgment of India, although it is Janhit versus Union of India. So the thing is that the answer to that is no, it does not violate the Mandal Commission 50% quota, because that was a separate issue that was looking at the backward classes in essence, the Adivasis, the real, Dalits and all those people who never saw the light of the day the way you and I do, and who were always pushed aside, and they were told that, look, you belong to this section, so you cannot come in. And more of those, that was prevalent in the north.
Right.
So that is what the basic question will be, that whether it's so. The answer to that is no, it doesn't, in my opinion. And two, this looks at the forward sections of the society, but who are very poor. So in essence, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to give an admission to somebody in a private unaided college to a poor person.
Absolutely.
By saying that there has to be 10% reservation. So what is wrong with that? In fact, I am trying to make that person
Mr. Kothari, stay with us. Just to update our viewers quickly, the judges have arrived in court. It is a 5-judge constitutional bench which is going to be announcing its verdict very shortly from now. Do remember that the verdict has been reserved for today. It was on the 27th of September, after hearing the case for 7 days consecutively, that this verdict was reserved. Coming back to Mr. Kothari. Now, Mr. Kothari, the second question that, a lot of educational institutions around the country will be watching out for is whether the government can force their hand in terms of providing reservation to economically weaker sections. Because the argument that's being made by them is that I couldn't quite get our producers over there. The argument that's being made is that, we can essentially provide that through, helping them in terms of providing economic support? Why do we have to set aside 10%? What are your thoughts on that?
This is that part that private unaided colleges, they may say that, look, the government has got no business telling me when I don't take aid from them what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to run my college. So to that part, to that extent, the word private college is aided or unaided in the amendment, where the word aided may be removed or may be considered as unconstitutional. So in part, that particular aspect could be considered unconstitutional, as the courts may say that, look, the private unaided colleges have the right to decide what they, what kind of reservations they need to have, or they don't want to have any reservations. So the unaided part may be removed, saying that that was unconstitutional because unaided colleges should have the full autonomy and should not be governed even slightest by the dictates of the government or by the state, where the states would then say that, look, even to the most richest college, say the equivalent of a Harvard University or the equivalent of a Georgetown University, equivalent of a Columbia University in this country, who do not take any aid from the government, look, you need to give this to 10% reservation. So they'll say, sorry, go to hell. We are already having our scholarships in place, and we are assisting not only the meritorious, but even the not only the rich meritorious, but even the non-rich meritorious. So we don't want the reservation business in our this. And so this is something which could be a point of bone of contention, and the judges may have thought about it also and may declare that part as unconstitutional.
Just to tell our viewers, we are standing by for that verdict. We are expecting that verdict to come in very, very shortly. The judges have already assembled, is what we are told. As I was earlier saying, this is a 5-judge constitution bench answering some very, very critical questions. Now, Mr. Kothari, I wanted to come back to you. This is obviously going to have a lot of political ramifications. It's also going to become an issue of centre versus the states, because there are a lot of states, depending who rules which state, which are opposed to this. Specifically, for instance, Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has been opposed to this. So what are your views on how do you see this going forward politically?
Well, there's always going to be politics when you have 29 states and 7 union territories. So, the judiciary has to stay away from it. It has to go simply by the dictates of the Constitution and decide what in its wisdom is the best route forward, whether or not to declare this totally unconstitutional, totally constitutional, partly constitutional, and partly unconstitutional. Those are the three, options that are there before the court. The court is not going to worry about, what's going to be the political fallout in Delhi or, say, in Tamil Nadu or, say, in Maharashtra for that matter, where there is a big ruckus on reservations any which ways. And then, of course, it is going to examine the issue on also that tomorrow there could be a linguistic reservation issue on these issues. So whether or not this judgment is going to foment that, whether or not this judgment is going to help that. So all of those things will also play in the minds of the judges before they come out with a judgment. And now that we are seeing that there is some sort of a split verdict in this, where, one of the judges has a separate verdict, and, that usually happens when you have 5 judges, and it sometimes happens even when you have 3 judges. So, I'd be very interested to see what is that separate verdict. And I hope that overall the constitutional validity of 103rd Amendment is upheld, and it does not seem to be violates the Constitution. And, as far as the real politicking of this is concerned, will be mainly in trying to bring in, the weaker sections of that society. So the debate will be there on what is the weaker sections and what not is the weaker section. So that is where the politics will place.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
If this were to be held valid.
Absolutely. And as you're pointing out, that's going to be a big question on everybody's mind. Thereafter, once the judgment is out, of course, we are standing by for the judgment. Harsha is also joining us from outside the Supreme Court. I think I'm going to quickly...
These are the 3 major issues, or rather 3 major points for determination formulation as to whether reservation is an instrument for inclusion of socially and educationally backward classes to the mainstream of society, and therefore reservation structured singularly on economic criteria violates the basic structure of the Constitution. B, as to whether the exclusion of classes covered under Articles 15.4, 15.5 and 16.4 from getting benefit of reservation as economically weaker sections violates the Equality Code and thereby the basic structure doctrine. see as to whether reservation for economically weaker sections of citizens up to 10%, in addition to the existing reservations, results in addition of basic structure on account of reaching the ceiling limit of 50%. These points for determination have been dealt with reference to the relevant constitutional provisions, doctrine of basic structure and constitutional amendments. Thereafter, the segments of the judgments are expanding doctrine of equality, affirmative action by reservation, exception to the general rule of equality, economic disabilities and affirmative action, whether economic criteria as sole basis for affirmative action violates basic structure, EWS reservation not availing to certain classes, whether violates basic structure, breach of 50% ceiling of reservations and basic structure, and then there are other factors and summations. After having dealt with these aspects, the conclusions are as follows. For what has been discussed and held herein above, the points formulated in paragraph 31, I just read that, are answered as follows. Reservation is an instrument of affirmative action by the state so as to ensure all inclusive march towards the goals of an egalitarian society while counteracting inequalities. It is an instrument not only for inclusion of socially and educationally backward classes to the mainstream of society, but also for inclusion of any class or section so disadvantaged as to be answering the description of a weaker section. In this background, reservation structured singularly on economic criteria does not violate any essential feature of the Constitution of India and does not cause any damage to the basic structure of the Constitution of India. B. The exclusion of the classes covered by Articles 15.4, 15.5 and 16.4 from getting the benefit of reservation as economically weaker sections, being in the nature of balancing the requirements of non-discrimination and compensatory discrimination, does not violate equality code and does not in any manner cause damage to the basic structure of the Constitution of India. C. Reservation for economically weaker sections of citizens up to 10% in addition to the existing reservations does not result in violation of any essential feature of the Constitution of India and does not cause any damage to the basic structure of the Constitution of India on account of breach of the ceiling limit of 50% because that ceiling limit itself is not inflexible and in any case applies only to the reservations envisaged by Articles 15.4, 15.5 and 16.4 of the Constitution. Not much of the contentions have been urged in relation to the impact of the amendment in question on admissions to private unaided institutions. However, it could at once be clarified that what has been observed herein above in relation to the principal part of challenge to the amendment in question, read with the decision of this court in Pramati Trust, the answer to the issue framed in that regard would also be against the challenge. Accordingly, and in view of the above, the answers to the issues formulated in these matters are as follows. 1. The 103rd Constitution Amendment cannot be said to breach the basic structure of the Constitution by permitting the state to make special provisions, including reservation, based on economic criteria. 2. The 103rd Constitution Amendment cannot be said to breach the basic structure of the Constitution by permitting the state to make special provisions in relation to the admission to private unaided institutions. 3. The 103rd Constitution Amendment cannot be said to breach the basic structure of the Constitution in excluding the SEBCs, OBCs, SCs, STs from the scope of EWS reservation. Consequently, the transferred cases, transfer petitions, writ petitions, and the petition for special leave appeal forming the part of this batch of matters are dismissed. Our acknowledgements while closing on this reference, sincere thanks and compliments deserve to be placed on record for the learned counsel for the respective parties, their associates and their researchers, and also all the constructive contributors whose erudite and scholarly presentation of respective viewpoints has rendered invaluable assistance to this court in shaping the formulations herein. Thank you.
I'll now invite Honorable Justice Bela Trivedi to place her view.
I have concurred with the opinion of Brother Justice Maheshwari. However, have penned down certain my views also. I'll just read them out. As well settled, it must be presumed that the legislature understands and appreciates the needs of its own people. Its laws are directed to the problems made manifest by experience, and its discriminations are based on adequate norms. Therefore, the constitutional amendment could not be struck down as discriminatory if the state of facts are reasonably conceived to justify it. In the instant case, the legislature, being aware of the exclusion of economically weaker section of the citizens from having the benefit of reservations provided to the SCs, STs, and SCBCs citizens in clause 4 and 5 of Article 15 and clause 4 of Article 16, has come out with the impugned amendment empowering the state to make special provisions for the advancement of EWS other than the classes mentioned in clause 4 and 5 of 15 and clause 4 of Article 16. The impugned amendment enabling the state to make special provisions for EWS of citizens other than SCs, STs, and SCBCs is required to be treated as an affirmative action on the part of the Parliament for the benefit of and for the advancement of the EWS of the citizens. Treating EWS of citizens as a separate class would be a reasonable classification and could not be termed as unreasonable or unjustifiable classification, much less a betrayal of basic feature or violation of Article 14. As laid down by this court, just as equals cannot be treated as unequals, unequals also cannot be treated as treated equally. Treating unequals as equals would be as well offend the doctrine of equality enshrined in Article 14 and 16 of the Constitution. The SCs, STs, and backward class for whom the special provisions have already been provided in Article 14, 15.4, 15.5, and 16.4 form a separate category as distinguished from the general or unreserved category. They cannot be treated at par with the citizens belonging to the general or unreserved category. The impugned amendment creates a separate class of EWS from the general or unreserved class without affecting the special rights of reservations provided to the SCs, STs, and SCBCs. Therefore, the exclusion from the newly created class for the benefit of EWS in the impugned amendment cannot be said to be discriminatory or violative of Equality Code. Such amendment could certainly not be termed as shocking, unconscionable, or unscrupulous travesty of quintessence of equal justice as sought to be submitted by learned counsel for the petitioners. The sum and substance is that the limitations, that is substantive or procedural, imposed on the exercise of constituent power of the state under Article 368 could not be said by any stretch of imagination to have been disregarded by the Parliament. Neither the procedural limitation, that is the mode of exercise of amending power, has been disregarded, nor substantive limitation, that is the restricted field, has been disregarded, which otherwise would invalidate the impugned amendment. What is visualized in the preamble and what is permissible, both in Part 3 and Part 4 of the Constitution, could not be said to be violative of the basic structure or basic feature of the Constitution. In absence of any obliteration of any of the constitutional provisions and in absence of any alteration or destruction in the existing structure of Equality Code or the basic structure of the Constitution, neither the width test nor the identity test as propounded in Keshwanand could be said to have been violated in the amendment. Accordingly, the challenge to the constitutional validity of 103rd Amendment fails and the validity thereof is upheld. And before parting, I have expressed my views on the time span to be prescribed for the reservation policy. I have quoted the observations made by the Constitution Bench in A.C. Vasant Kumar, observations of Justice D.A. Desai, Justice Venkatramaiah, Justice Chandrachud as he then was, and also in the case of Ashok Kumar, and at the end, I said what was envisioned by the framers of the Constitution, what was proposed by the Constitution Bench in 1985, and what was sought to be achieved on the completion of 50 years of the advent of the Constitution, that is, the policy of reservation must have a time span, has still not been achieved even till this day, that is, till the completion of 75 years of our independence. It cannot be gainsaid that the age-old caste system in India was responsible for the origination of this reservation system in the country. It was introduced to correct the historical injustice faced by the persons belonging to the SCs, STs, and other backward classes, and to provide them a level playing field to compete with the persons belonging to the forward classes. However, at the end of 75 years of our independence, we need to revisit the system of reservation in the larger interest of the society as a whole, as a step forward towards the transformative constitutionalism. Be it noted that as per Article 334 of the Constitution, the provisions of Constitution relating to the reservation of seats for SCs and STs in the House of People and in the legislative assemblies of the states would cease to have effect on the expiration of the period of 80 years from the commencement of the Constitution. The representation of Anglo-Indian community in the House of Parliament and in the legislative assemblies of the state by nomination has already ceased by virtue of 104th Amendment that is with effect from 25th January 2020. Therefore, similar timeline, if prescribed, for the special provisions in respect of the reservations and representations provided in Article 15 and 16 of the Constitution, it would be a way forward leading to an egalitarian, casteless and classless society. Thank you so much.
May I now invite Justice Paradiwala to place his view?
While concurring with my esteemed brother, Justice Maheshwari, and my esteemed sister, Justice Trivedi, and while upholding the validity of the impugned amendment, I have thought fit to observe, I quote, "Thus, reservation is not an end, but a means to secure social and economic justice. Reservation should not be allowed to become a vested interest. Real solution, however, lies in eliminating the causes that have led to the social, educational, and economic backwardness of the weaker sections of the community. This exercise of eliminating the causes started immediately after the independence, that is almost 7 decades back, and it still continues. The long-standing development and the spread of education have resulted in tapering the gap between the classes to a considerable extent. As larger percentages of backward class members attain acceptable standards of education and employment, they should be removed from the backward categories so that the attention can be paid towards those classes which genuinely need help. In such circumstances, it is very much necessary to take into review the method of identification and the ways of determination of backward classes, and also ascertain whether the criteria adopted or applied for the classification of backward is relevant for today's conditions. The idea of Baba Saheb Ambedkar was to bring social harmony by introducing reservation for only 10 years. However, it has continued past 7 decades. Reservation should not continue for an indefinite period of time so as to become a vested interest. In the result, I hold that the impugned amendment is valid and in no manner alters the basic structure of the Constitution. Thank you.
Finally, I invite Justice Bhat to place it.
I regret my inability to concur with the views expressed by the majority opinion on the validity of the 103rd Amendment on question number 3, since I feel, for reasons set out elaborately in the following opinion that this court has for the first time in the seven decades of the Republic sanctioned an avowedly exclusionary and discriminatory principle. Our Constitution does not speak the language of exclusion. In my considered opinion, the amendment by the language of exclusion undermines the fabric of social justice and thereby the basic structure. I am of the opinion that the application of the doctrine of classification, differentiating the poorest segments of societies as one segment, that is the poor beneficiaries of reservation, and the other, the poorest who are subjected to additional disabilities due to caste stigmatization or social barrier-based discrimination, the latter being justifiably kept out of the new reservation benefit, is an exercise in deluding ourselves that those getting social and educational backwardness-based reservations are somehow more fortunate. This classification is plainly contrary to the essence of equal opportunity. If this constitution means anything, it is that the code of articles 15.1, 15.2, 15.4, 16.1, 16.2 and 16.4 are one indivisible whole. This court has reiterated time and again that articles 16.1 and 16.4 are facets of the same equality principle. That we need articles 15.4 and 16.4 to achieve equality opportunity guaranteed to all in articles 15.1 and 16.1 cannot now be undermined through this reasoning to hold that the theory of classification permits exclusion on this very basis. The characterization of including the poor, that is, those who qualify for economic eligibility, among those covered under Articles 15.4 and 16.4 in the new reservations under 15.6 and 16.6 as bestowing double benefit is incorrect. What is described as benefits for those covered under Articles 15.4 and 16.4 by the Union cannot be understood to be a free pass, but as a reparative and compensatory mechanism meant to level the field, where they are unequal due to their social stigmatization. This exclusion violates the non-discrimination and the non-exclusionary facet of the Equality Code, which thereby violates the basic structure of the Constitution. The impugned amendment creates pathways, gateways, and opportunities to the poorest segments of our society, enabling them multiple access points to spaces they were unable to go, places and positions they were unable to fill, and opportunities they could not hope ever to ordinarily lose due to their destitution, economic deprivation, and penury. These destitution, economic deprivation, poverty are markers or intelligible differentia, forming the basis of the classification on which the impugned amendment is entirely premised. To that extent, the amendment is constitutionally indefeasible. However, by excluding a large section of the equally poor and destitute individuals based on the social backwardness and legally acknowledged caste stigmatization from the benefit of the new opportunities created for the poor, the amendment practices constitutionally prohibited forms of discrimination. The overarching principles under Articles 15.1, 15.2, 16.1 and 16.2 is that caste-based or community-based exclusion, that is the practice of discrimination, is impermissible. Whichever way one would look at it, the Constitution is intolerant towards discrimination and untouchability in all forms and manifestations which are articulated in Articles 15.1, 15.2, 16, 17, 23, and 24. It is prohibits exclusion based on past discriminatory practices. The exclusion made through the other than exclusionary clause negates these principles and strikes the heart of the Equality Code, specifically the non-discriminatory principle, which is a part of the core of the Constitution. The Sinnoh Commission was set up. The Sinnoh Commission was set up to examine the condition of economically backward and suggested measures, including the feasibility of reservations, to improve their law. The report published in July 2010 is based upon the census of 2001 and later surveys. The statistics NSSO 2004-2005, which the report is based on, disclosed that in all 31.7 crore people were below the poverty line, BPL, of which the scheduled caste population was 7.74 crores. That is 38% of the total of the scheduled caste population in the country. Scheduled tribe population was 4.25 crores, that is 48.4% of the total scheduled tribes of the country. 13.86 crores of OBC population, which was 33.1% of the total OBCs, and 5.85 crores of the general category, which is 18.2% the total general category. These facts established that the bulk of the economically weaker sections of the society belong to the classes described in Articles 15.4 and 16.4. I pass on to question number 2, which is that unaided private institutions, including those imparting professional education, cannot be seen as standing out of the national mainstream. As held in Pramati and Society for Unaided Private Schools, reservations in private institutions is not per se violative of the basic structure. Thus, reservations as a concept cannot be ruled out in private institutions where education is imparted. They may not be the state or state instrumentalities, yet the value that they add is part of the national effort to develop skill and disseminate knowledge. These institutions, therefore, also constitute material resources of the community, in which the state has a vital interest and are not merely bodies set up to further private objective of their founders, unlike in the case of shareholders of the company. Therefore, I hold that on question number 2, the amendment is valid, but for reasons of answering question number 3, the amendment has to go. Before I sum up, I wish to address one point which the majority has dealt with, but more as a note of caution, because it is not necessary for me to deal with that aspect, which is the 50% cap. It is pertinent to note that the breach of the 50% limit is the principal ground of attack of the 76th Constitutional Amendment, 1994, which is inserted as entry 257A. The Tamil Nadu Backward Classes, Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Reservation of Seats in Educational Institutions under the State Act 1993. The validity of that enactment and whether the inclusion by the Constitution Amendment violates the basic structure is directly an issue in a batch of cases pending before this court. The view of the members of this bench constituting a majority that the creation of another class which can be a recipient of up to 10% of reservation over and above 50% permitted under 15.4 or 16.4 in my considered opinion therefore has a direct bearing on the likely outcome in the challenge in that proceeding. I would therefore sound this cautionary note, since this judgment may well seal the fate of the pending litigations without the benefit of hearing in those proceedings. The last reason why I find myself unpersuaded to agree with the opinion that the amendments, by creating a different kind of criteria, have to be viewed separately, and that Indira Sani was confined to reservations under 15.4 and 16.4 is because permitting the breach of the 50% rule, as it were, through this reasoning becomes a gateway for further infractions, which in fact would result in compartmentalization. The rule of reservation could well then become the rule of equality or the right to equality, could then be easily reduced to the right to reservation, leading us back to the days of Champakam Durai Raja. In this regard, the observations of Ambedkar have to be kept in mind that reservations are to be seen as temporary and exceptional, or else they could eat up the rule of equality. The fraternal principle, I'm now summing up, the fraternal principle is deeply embedded to this nation's ethos and culture. The specific provisions which form part of the Equality Code are inextricably intertwined with fraternity as well. It is fraternity and no other idea which acknowledges that ultimately all individuals are human beings born through the same natural process, subject to the same physical limitations, and finally leave this world at an unknown time but are sure to live. Fraternity is as a concept, awakens humans to the reality that despite our apparent or superficial differences, ethnic, religious, caste, gender, origin, or economic status, the institutions we create need our collective cooperation and individual commitment. Every social order invariably contains individuals with differences, be it grounded on ethnicity, wealth, talent, or realization of one's abilities. The diversities abound. The idea of fraternity is to awaken to the consciousness of each member of society that our institutions which are created, the ideas that we develop, and the progress that we wish to achieve cannot be in isolation, by separation, but with cooperation and harmony. On this, I want to highlight the words of two social reformers, which demonstrate that the principle of fraternity and the ideas and values connected to it are not new, but in fact transcend time. Swami Vivekananda's message in his address to the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago on 11 September 1893 has the theme of universal brotherhood of all, that differences in religion, the exclusion of one of other would fade. He evocatively said, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and destruction of others, I pity him from the bottom of my heart and point out to him the banner of every religion will soon be written, in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. Aurobindo too was conscious of the need for fraternity. In a speech delivered in Howrah in 1909, he presciently said, again, there is fraternity. It is the last term of the gospel. It is the most difficult to achieve. Still, it is a thing towards which all religions call and human aspirations rise. There is discord in life, but mankind yearns for peace and love. This is the reason why the Gospels will preach brotherhood, which preach brotherhood, spread quickly, and excite passionate attachment. This was the reason for the rapid spread of Christianity. This was the reason of Buddha's spread in the country and throughout Asia. This is the essence of humanitarianism, the modern gospel of love for mankind. None of us have achieved our ideals, but human society has always attempted an imperfect and limited fulfillment of them. It is the nature, the dharma of humanity, that it should be unwilling to stand alone. Every man seeks the brotherhood of his fellow, and we can only live by fraternity with others. Through all its differences and discords, humanity is striving to become one. Summary of findings in questions 1 and 3. On question 1, it is held that the state's compelling interest to fulfill the objectives set out in the directive principles through special provisions on the basis of economic criteria is legitimate. That reservation or special provisions have so far been provided in favor of historically disadvantaged communities cannot be the basis for contending that other disadvantaged groups who have not been able to progress due to the ill effects of poverty should remain so, and the special provision should not be made by way of affirmative action. Therefore, the special provisions based on objective economic criteria is per se not violated. However, in answer to question 3, I have highlighted the framework within which it has been introduced by the impugned amendment, excluding backward classes. According to me, this is violative of the basic structure. A universally acknowledged truth is that reservations have been conceived and quotas created through provisions in the Constitution only to offset fundamental, deep-rooted generations of wrongs perpetrated on entire communities and castes. reservation is designed as a powerful tool to enable equal access and equal opportunity. Introducing the economic basis for reservation as a new criterion is permissible. Yet, the othering of socially and educationally disadvantaged classes, including SCs, SCs, and OBCs, by excluding them from this new reservation on the ground that they enjoy pre-existing benefits, is to heap fresh injustice based on past disability. The exclusionary clause operates in an utterly arbitrary manner. First, it others those subjected to socially questionable and outlawed practices, though they are amongst the poorest sections of the society. Secondly, for the purpose of new reservation, the exclusion operates against socially disadvantaged classes and castes absolutely, by confining them within their allotted reservation quotas. Thirdly, it denies the chance of mobility from reserve quota based upon past discrimination to a reservation benefit based only on economic deprivation. The net result of the entire exclusionary principle is Orwellian, so to say, which is that all the poorest are entitled to be considered regardless of their caste or class, yet only those who belong to other classes or caste would be considered, and those from socially disadvantaged classes would be ineligible. Within the narrative of the classification jurisprudence, the differential or marker distinguishing one person from the other is deprivation alone. The exclusion, however, is not based on deprivation, but social origin or identity. This strikes at the essence of the non-discriminatory rule.
To speak on that, sir, how do you see this verdict?
ये बहुत अच्छा फैसला है, लैंडमार्क जजमेंट है, इसका मैं स्वागत करता हूं। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 3-4 बातें बहुत स्पष्ट कर दिया। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये कह दिया कि केवल कास्ट बेस्ड रिजर्वेशन नहीं होना चाहिए, बल्कि आर्थिक आधार पे भी आरक्षण दिया जा सकता है। दूसरा ये भी कह दिया कि जो 50% की सीलिंग है उसको बढ़ाई जा सकती है, और ये भी कह दिया कि ये जो 10% रिजर्वेशन है गरीबों के लिए, ये कास्ट बेस्ड नहीं है, इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया है। जो 50% की सीलिंग है वो कास्ट बेस्ड रिजर्वेशन के लिए है, इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया के लिए नहीं है। जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट जस्टिस बेला त्रिवेदी का जो ऑब्जर्वेशन है, उन्होंने कहा इस रिजर्वेशन सिस्टम को रिव्यू करने की जरूरत है। 75 साल हो गए, आखिर रिजर्वेशन कब तक चलेगा और कैसे कैसे चलेगा। मेरा भी ये मानना है कि बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग पिछले 3 जनरेशन से रिजर्वेशन ले रहे हैं, मतलब उनके दादा भी रिजर्वेशन के सहारे कलेक्टर बन गए, बेटा भी रिजर्वेशन के सहारे कलेक्टर बन गया, और नाती और पोते भी कलेक्टर रिजर्वेशन के सहारे डॉक्टर, इंजीनियर, प्रोफेसर बन रहे हैं। इसको रिव्यू करने की जरूरत। भाई जो व्यक्ति एक बार सांसद बन गया, विधायक बन गया, कलेक्टर बन गया, तहसीलदार बन गया, थानेदार बन गया, मंत्री बन गया, गवर्नर बन गया, या वाइस प्रेसिडेंट बन गया, उसके बच्चों को रिजर्वेशन क्यों मिलना चाहिए? अब रामविलास पासवान जी के परिवार को रिजर्वेशन क्यों मिलना चाहिए? रामनाथ कोविंद जी के परिवार को रिजर्वेशन क्यों मिलना चाहिए? उदित राज जी के परिवार को रिजर्वेशन क्यों मिलना चाहिए? जिसके घर में एक बार रिजर्वेशन हो गया उसको दोबारा नहीं मिलना चाहिए। इसलिए इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया मुझे लगता है SC, ST, OBC सब में फॉलो करना चाहिए। एक रिजर्वेशन का एक क्राइटेरिया हो, 6 लाख हो पर एनम या 8 लाख पर एनम हो, लेकिन जो है वो सबके लिए होना चाहिए, तभी वास्तव में नीडी लोगों को इसका फायदा मिलेगा। नहीं तो जो अमीर है वही बार बार लेता रहेगा, जो गरीब है उसको रिजर्वेशन नहीं मिलेगा।
तो आपको भी लगता है कि आर्थिक आधार पर ये जो रिजर्वेशन है ये हेल्पफुल रहेगा पुअर के लिए और डाउन
बिल्कुल ये फायदा रहेगा। और SC, ST, OBC में भी एक इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया डाल देना चाहिए। 6 लाख डालें या 8 लाख डालें, वो डिस्कशन की जरूरत है, मुझे लगता है वाइडर एक डिस्कशन होना चाहिए। लेकिन मेरा मानना है कि जो झुग्गी झोपड़ी में रहने वाले, जो घर में हाउस होल्ड का काम कर रही है, जो ड्राइवर है, जो स्वीपर है, उसके बच्चे को रिजर्वेशन मिलना चाहिए, न कि कलेक्टर को, थानेदार को और मंत्री, सांसद, विधायकों के बच्चों को।
आपको क्या लगता है इसके बाद सोसाइटी में 2019 में ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट आया, उसके बाद अभी अपहोल्ड किया गया सुप्रीम कोर्ट के द्वारा, आपको क्या लगता है अगले आगामी सालों में इसका इम्पैक्ट सोसाइटी पे कैसा हो?
इसका इम्पैक्ट ये होगा कि मुझे लगता है ग्रेजुअली धीरे धीरे हम इकोनॉमिक रिजर्वेशन की तरफ जाएंगे, इकोनॉमिक बेस्ड रिजर्वेशन जाएंगे, और फिर स्लाइटली मुझे लगता है हम लोग रिजर्वेशन से बाहर भी आ जाएंगे, क्योंकि एक टाइम ऐसा भी आएगा, शायद 20-25 साल में आ जाएगा, जहां इस देश में रिजर्वेशन नहीं बल्कि मेरिट की जरूरत होगी।
So you talked about merit, and you are you pro reservation or you think that merit should be the?
नहीं, अभी वर्तमान कंडीशन में मैं जो कास्ट बेस्ड रिजर्वेशन है उसको मानता हूं, लेकिन जो एग्जिस्टिंग सिस्टम है उसके मैं बिल्कुल खिलाफ हूं, क्योंकि हो ये रहा है कि सांसदों के, विधायकों के, मंत्रियों के, थानेदारों के, कलेक्टरों के बच्चे रिजर्वेशन का बेनिफिट ले रहे हैं। वास्तव में जो झुग्गी में रहने वाला है, जो स्वीपर है, जो क्लर्क है या कंडक्टर है, या जो चपरासी है या किसान है या मजदूर है, उसके बच्चे को रिजर्वेशन का फायदा नहीं मिल रहा है। उनके बच्चे बहुत हाई फाई स्कूल में नहीं पढ़ पाते, हाई फाई कोचिंग नहीं करा पाते, उनको बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रहा है। इसलिए एक इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया, चाहे वो पर ईयर पर मंथ 50,000 का हो, या पर मंथ 60,000 का हो, जो भी है, लेकिन एक इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया SC, ST, OBC रिजर्वेशन में भी डालना चाहिए.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for speaking with Republic. So it was Advocate Ashwini Upadhyay who welcomed the Supreme Court verdict on EWS quota. However, he added few things into it, like the economic criteria on which the quota is there for general category should go to the SC, ST and other categories, and there should be a generalization of reservation, and according to him in coming years the reservation gradually would end. With video journalist Bhishma, this is Sambhav Sharma from Supreme Court.
All right, so just breaking down this verdict that has come in today, this is a landmark judgment that has been delivered by the topmost court of the country. The Supreme Court has upheld by 4:1 the 10% EWS reservation. The Constitution bench over there upholding it by 4:1. Just to tell our viewers that the Chief Justice of India, UU Lalit, Justice Dinesh Maheshwari, Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice JB Padriwala gave the majority judgment. Justice Ravindra Bhat disagreed and termed it unconstitutional. I'm going to go across to Mr. Sankla, who's joining us right now. Mr. Sankla, so landmark judgment coming in, essentially the Supreme Court upholding this, and all the judges that we were hearing essentially seem to point to the fact that this is the doctrine of equality that has been adopted by the government. So your thoughts on this landmark judgment?
Well, first of all, we actually live in very exciting times. The kind of judgments that have been delivered by the Honorable Supreme Court, changing the laws, changing the concepts and changing how we understand various aspects of law is profound. Now, this judgment is very interesting. I'm also waiting to see what would happen to the Karnataka and to the Tamil Nadu reservation cases which are pending. But it's a very interesting thing how equality has been understood by 4 judges and by Justice Bhat. And though, my reasonable mind says that any kind of quota should go, why should it be there? India is developed and all of that. That's the rational mind. But when I was also hearing and going through what Justice Bhat said, he did make some very compelling arguments. You see, as far as equality is concerned, and as far as reading and protecting the Constitution is concerned, I really wonder, and I need to read the judgment once again, to see whether a social differentiation infringes upon the basic structure of the Constitution or not. I understand that 4 judges have said, no, it doesn't. It just creates a sliver. It doesn't take away the rights of the SC, ST and OBC. But the fact is that, consistently, Keshwanand Bharti, as I keep coming to it, has stated that the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be amended. Now, what cannot be done by law cannot be done by any circuitous way as well. And so it is surprising for me. And as I said, I would be very excited to read what Justice Lalit, Justice Maheshwari and Justice Trivedi has said to understand how they have differentiated this. Because I am, as I said, a criminal and a constitutional lawyer, and I would do anything to protect my constitution. It's a beautiful piece of work. The difficulty that I'm facing is when Justice Bhat says this, that the social differentiation infringes upon the basic structure of constitution. It does make me wonder whether Justice Bhat is right or wrong. As far as the minority view is concerned, that is one aspect. The other aspect of it is that whether this reservation would also affect private institutes. I understand that the judges have stated something on that. But the concept of private institutes or minority held institutes is that those are pro that minority that they are catering to. So whether this EWS categorization would affect that or not is something that I would really like to see as well.
Also, what I wanted to bring your attention to, Mr. Sankla, over there is that, of course, you pointed out, that the change, that there is a difference in perception of what constitutes for equality, and that has been the basis of this judgment. Now, the other part of it also is that they have essentially said that they are in agreement with affirmative action that has been taken by the government of the day. Also, the question of 50% reservation, they say that that's really something that can be breached if there is a need for it. Now, what do you make of that aspect?
My understanding is that the Honorable Court has not said that you can breach it. What they have said, in my understanding, is that the affirmative action creates a sliver that does not breach the basic fabric of the Constitution. Now, this is why I said that, but when Justice Bhat says this, that the purpose of Article 15.4 and 16.4 was that the categorization should be done on basis of your birth. It makes me wonder whether, as I said, is Justice Bhat right or wrong? Because you see, a poor man can be rich tomorrow, and a rich man can be poor tomorrow. But unfortunately, a man born to a certain caste would always remain a part of that certain caste. So therefore, I think that was the protective mechanism that was seen when the constitution was created. So either we say that all kinds of quota should go, it should be completely merit-based. And today we say that there cannot be any kind of quota, any kind of benefit given to any minority, majority, poor, rich, fair, dark, Anglo-American, Anglo-Indian, whatever. It still makes sense to me. But where you say that no, there is certain kind of benefits given to a certain segment or certain sector of people, then I wonder when Justice Bhat again said that should there be any such amendment, it is to right what was the previous wrong. It is not a free pass.
Right.
And when you actually think about it, you know, and in complete deference to the 4 judges, I just wonder.
Just a quick correction over there, Mr. Sankla. Now, there were 2 dissenting judges. We are given to understand that this has passed 3-2. Justice UU Lalit as well as Justice Bhat have both dissented with the upholding of the EOW quota. Now, I'm going to go back to Mr. Sankla on this one. Mr. Sankla, what we're also, looking at very closely at that judgment is the part where it was said that reservation should be subject to review. And a lot of people in this country will find an echo with that today when, one of the judges over there, the justices over there said that this cannot go on forever. It needs to be reviewed. There need to be new mechanisms in place to identify people who actually require reservation. Your thoughts on that?
You're absolutely right. And that's what I say. I completely agree with that. I believe that all kinds of reservations should go. I believe that the world should be all in black and white, as fair education system should be normal, equal for everybody. I believe in that. You see, as far as EWS categorization in schools are concerned, it's also failing miserably, isn't it? I mean, you have a poor child studying in a school where people are coming in Mercedes, and he doesn't even have probably bus money. How does he actually justify his existence in that school? It is difficult for that child. You have to understand that as well. So when they say that as far as quota is concerned, we should revisit it, I am in complete agreement. But where you say that let us create one more quota, that is the place where I have a little bit of a problem, as I said, as a constitutional lawyer. I understand that one of the judges said, and very beautifully so, I think it was Justice Trivedi who said that treating EWS a separate class is reasonable because unequals cannot be treated equally. I think that's a beautiful
Absolutely.
line. But the converse is as true.
Right, Mr. Sankla, do stay with us. I think
so the converse.
Right. Mr. Sankla, do stay with us. Our legal editor also joining us right now. Rhythm, it's a historic judgment, whatever you say, but we are now getting to understand that Justice UU Lalit as well as Justice Ravindra Bhat have both dissented. This is a 3-2 verdict. Both of them feel that this is violative of the basic structure, but it does go forward. So in that sense, this is not going to be rolled back at all, Rhythm.
Absolutely. And the big news that's coming in from the Supreme Court, like Kapil Sankla was also telling us, this is an historic judgment. And I do believe that irrespective of the fact that it's 3-2, the fact is that even with 2 dissenting opinions, the majority upholds the pro-poor quota. So the landmark decision is there to stay, which clearly means that reservations in India, when it comes to certain schools and public colleges, will continue. The Supreme Court 5-judge bench has upheld the reservation for economically weaker sections of society in government jobs and colleges across India. Now, what has been upheld? The Supreme Court has 5-judge constitution bench upholds the constitutional validity of the 103rd constitutional amendment, which introduced 10% reservation, and that's the reservation for economically weaker sections in education and public employment. Why is this relevant? Because therefore, after this, it's clearly admitted by the court that we will continue to have this There have been 2 dissenting judgments, but first I want to go across to the majority judgment that has been reiterated in the courtroom by Justice Maheshwari and his brother judges, in which they have stated, and I'm just going to read out the words that they've said as the Supreme Court has put this out before them. Yes. So, by the way, it's one of the first times ever, viewers, that we're able to live watch a verdict that's coming in from the top court. And we saw that on Justice Lalit's last day. Justice Maheshwari had stated that there are certain questions formulated, after which we also saw that he said whether EWS of 10%, whether EVS of 10% in addition of 50% violates basic structure will have to be seen. And he says that reservation is an instrument of affirmative action by the state so as to ensure an all-inclusive approach. He then said in this background, it does not violate the basic structure of the Constitution. He also says reservation structured singularly on economic criteria does not violate the basic structure. Amendment cannot be said to be a breach of the basic structure of Constitution. After which, after he spoke, Justice Bela M. Trivedi gave her judgment. Let me first go across to reactions that are coming in from advocates across the country. Take a look.
ये जो संशोधन किया गया है वो संविधान की मंशा के अनुरूप है, जबकि जस्टिस रविंद्र भट्ट और जस्टिस मुख्य न्यायमूर्ति ललित ने कहा कि ये संविधान की मंशा के विपरीत नहीं है और एक्सक्लूजन जो किया गया है वो संविधान की जो मूल भावना है या उसके अनुच्छेद हैं उसके अगेंस्ट है। नाम सर, नाम हम लिख के भेज देंगे ना सर, गौरव यादव। हाँ,
All right, as the lawyers in the courtroom are also saying 2 dissenting opinions, 3 concurring judgments, viewers, let me also tell you what Justice Trivedi had stated in the courtroom. She said legislature attends and understands the needs of the people and is aware of the economic exclusion of certain people from reservation, and therefore she concurs with Justice Maheshwari. She also says this amendment enabling state to make special provision for other than the SC/ST should be treated as affirmative action by the parliament. The amendment as a separate class is a reasonable classification. What they are talking about, therefore, is for now the 10% economic reservation in colleges, in government jobs will continue for the economically weaker sections, because they believe it cannot be said that the age-old caste system in India led to the introduction of reservations, and so SC/ST got level playing field. At the end of the 75 years, we need to take a relook at reservations in general in spirit of transformative constitutionalism. If I can also go across to my guests who are with us, before I just do that, I'm going to say Justice Pardiwala says reservation should not continue for an indefinite time so that it becomes a vested interest, and therefore he says, finally, I uphold the EWS judgment. Justice Bhat has dissented, and viewers, as the dissent continues and Justice Lalit also dissents, the landmark judgment clearly says that Constitutional Amendment 103 is going to be upheld and it is here to stay. We're back on this coverage after a short break. Stay on with us.
Supreme Court will pronounce its verdict today on whether the petition filed against Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren alleging money laundering through shell companies and obtaining mining lease are maintainable or not. Supreme Court bench of Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia and Dinesh Maheshwari are set to pronounce the verdict. Conrad Sukesh Chandrasekhar has shot off another letter to Delhi LG alleging that he has been receiving threats on behalf of now imprisoned Minister Satyendra Jain and DG Prison Sandeep Goyal, who's been transferred. In earlier 2 letters, Sukesh had claimed that Arvind Kejriwal promised a Rajya Sabha seat in lieu of 50 crore rupees. A 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court led by Chief Justice of India UU Lalit is scheduled to pronounce judgment on the challenge to the validity of the 103rd constitutional amendment, which provides 10% reservation in government jobs and educational institutions to the economically weaker sections of society, but excludes the poorest of poor among scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes from its ambit. After the ED issued fresh summons to Karnataka Congress State Chief DK Shivakumar, asking him to appear before it on November 7th, which is today, in connection with the ongoing money laundering case The Karnataka's Congress state chief has stated that he will not be attending, he will not be going for the quizzing in connection with the scam, and that he would be attending a birthday party of his party worker instead. Delhi woke up to a lingering smoke covering its sky with the overall AQI under the very poor category at 326. Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai will chair a high-level meet to discuss new directions by Centre's Air Quality Panel about revoking curbs imposed under the final stage of the Graded Response Action Plan.
The RSS holding a rally in Cuddalore in Tamil Nadu after the massive face-off between the state government and the RSS. The BJP that has won 3 out of the 7 seats in the by-polls today. The Prime Minister in Bhavnagar is not just going to be speaking to the people there, he's attending that mass marriage.
Team of Kamrup District Police in Assam led by officer in charge of Chiagaon police station busted fake Indian currency racket and apprehended 5 people. According to the police officials, fake currency notes, 1 printing machine, 8 phones and other objectionable items were recovered. A case has also been registered. MOSMA V. Muralidharan arrived in Brazil. Muralidharan is set to address Brazilian Congress at a session on 75 years of India's independence and also interact with Brazilian leadership and Indian community. DMK MP Kanimoi has sought an appointment to meet President Draupadi Murmu to submit its petition to recall the Tamil Nadu Governor R.N. Ravi. Kanimoi has said to make a disrespecting comment by the Governor against those representatives who have been elected by the people is against constitutional rights. Supreme Court will pronounce its verdict today on whether the petition filed against Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren alleging money laundering through shell companies and obtaining mining lease are maintainable or not. Supreme Court bench of Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia and Dinesh Maheshwari are set to pronounce the verdict. Conman Sukesh Chandrasekhar has shot off another letter to Delhi LG alleging that he has been receiving threats on behalf of now imprisoned Minister Satyendra Jain and DG Prison Sandeep Goyal, who's been transferred. In earlier 2 letters, Sukesh had claimed that Arvind Kejriwal promised a Rajya Sabha seat in lieu of 50 crore rupees. A 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court led by Chief Justice of India UU Lalit is scheduled to pronounce judgment on the challenge to the validity of the 103rd constitutional amendment, which provides 10% reservation in government jobs.
All right, and there's news that's coming in right now when we're going to go across and say the Supreme Court upholds the pro-poor quota. We've also seen once again Udit Raj says the Supreme Court is casteist in a tweet, and he's once again making these controversial statements. The Congress leader says when it comes to EWS reservation, how was it reversed that the 50% limit is not a constitutional obligation? But whenever it comes to give reservation to SC, ST, OBC, the 50% limit in Indira Swami case is cited. Before I go across to this couple, I do believe it's Udit Raj, once again the Congress leader, trying to once again besmirch a very important pillar of our democracy.
You know, the problem with politicians mostly is that they don't understand law and how the legal process works. And that's our misfortune, that so much of footage is given to them. Rightly or wrongly, the Honorable Supreme Court has applied its mind. It has gone through the law that is there, the precedents that are there. It has gone through international precedents as well and delivered a judgment. I may not agree with it intellectually, but it will be foolish of me to cast personal remarks against the Honorable Supreme Court. I just told you that I'm looking forward to reading the judgment because there is a judgment that is pro-EWS, but I also am in concurrence with Justice Bhat intellectually. So therefore, for a politician to make personal comments, I am so sorry. I feel sorry for him. If he would have come up with some bright idea about some international law precedents or something like that, I would have respected him. So I have nothing to say to a person like that who probably is just wanting free footage. Sorry. The second thing I would like to say is this, that, you know, people, you just said that about Justice Trivedi. He said that there should be a time limit to SC/ST representation in Parliament by reservation. And as far as the reservation is concerned, also talking about the Anglo-Indians. So I am again in concurrence with what he says. I think it is high time that we do revisit. But my only difficulty is this, as I said, while revisiting it, why are we creating just another quota? And what happens tomorrow with somebody else? For example, you will have probably, I'm just saying, an LGBTQ activist who comes and says, oh, we need a quota as well. And somebody else comes and says, we need a quota as well. What are we actually creating? Are we creating a quota country once again? And the whole idea is to actually remove the quota and create a level playing field for everyone. And my heart does go out to, and I've said this before in some forum, that, the weaker brother was usually slapped around. This is how I think that, as Indians are concerned, we are one big family. There is somebody who's poor, not probably powerful enough. And we probably beaten him around when he was young. But we've all grown up. It is high time that we own up to our mistakes and say sorry to a younger brother. I'm talking about the SC/STs. Say, we are sorry. When we were younger, we were not very intelligent. This is how we used to play. We are sorry. But come and play with us now. This is what you're talking about, creating a level playing field. What you're doing is that you're also calling your country cousins and saying, please come with us. You also can play kachi mitti with us. You will not be out. This is not what we want. But having said that, this is in complete regard to what the Honorable Supreme Court has said. And as I said, that is in concurrence with what has been said by the court. But when I read what Justice Bhat has said, I do see the words of caution coming from him. I mean, when Justice Maheshwari says that 103rd Amendment is contrary to basic structure, I think he's the one who said that. And Justice Trivedi said, no, it isn't. There's a sliver that has been created. Unequals cannot be treated equally. I am in concurrence with what they say. But when Justice Bhat also says that the amendment is deluding us to believe that getting quota is being better placed, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, or quota is a compensatory mechanism, is not a free pass. I would wait as an intellectual and read it and try to assimilate it. I would not call anybody biased here. I would just say intellectually they've applied their mind. And this is the beauty of our democratic country and our judicial process. So when somebody is trying to belittle it for his own hidden or vote bank, it is unfortunate. That is all.
Yes. And Kapil, I would like to tell our viewers that as this judgment comes, Justice Bhat, Justice Lalit had given a different judgment. But, the Congress is once again trying to besmirch the reputation of the judiciary. And that is what is shocking for me. When the Congress hits out at the Supreme Court and calls them casteist and not realize. First, let me go across on the phone line. Joining us is Professor S.P. Baghel. He is the MOS in the Law Ministry. Professor Baghel, first, your views, sir, on the order of the Supreme Court, and then I'm going to ask you on the words of Udit Raj, who calls the Supreme Court casteist.
माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट की संविधान पीठ के जो आज निर्णय आया है EWS के रिजर्वेशन को जारी रखने के लिए, मैं उसका स्वागत करता हूं। और देश है संविधान और कानून से चलेगा, तो जो भी किसी को भी दिक्कत होती है लोकसभा के किसी निर्णय को लेकर के, तो वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट जा सकते हैं। लोअर कोर्ट में दिक्कत होती है तो हाई कोर्ट के फैसले से किसी को ऑब्जेक्शन होता है तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट जा सकते हैं। लास्ट में सुप्रीम कोर्ट की संविधान पीठ जो होती है वो हम सबके लिए मान्य होती है और हम मानने के लिए बाध्य भी होते हैं। और जो भारतीय जनता पार्टी मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में 2019 में जो EWS को 10% आरक्षण दिया गया था, 5 जजों की संविधान पीठ में 3 लोगों ने बहुमत के साथ इसको जारी रखने का आदेश दिया है। ये एक अच्छी बात है क्योंकि सवर्ण वर्ग में भी बहुत से लोग महागरीब होते हैं। जातियों के अनुसार लोग अमीरी गरीबी या मध्यम वर्ग में नहीं पैदा होते हैं, बल्कि पैदा होना एक संयोग होता है। और उसके बाद मैं देखता हूँ ब्राह्मण समाज में बहुत सी महिलाएं दूसरे के घरों में भोजन बनाती हैं। वैश्य समाज में भी, क्षत्रिय समाज में भी बहुत लोग गरीब होते हैं। तो जिस देश में 80 करोड़ लोग 5 किलो गेहूं और चावल पिछले 3 साल से मुफ्त में लेने के लिए पसंद हो रहे हैं, इस 80 करोड़ के 12,000 का केवल शौचालय के लिए प्रधान के पास आते हैं और 1.5 लाख के प्रधानमंत्री ग्रामीण आवास के लिए मैं समय आगरा में जनता से मिल रहा हूँ तो वहाँ लोग आते हैं। तो कहने का मतलब है कि गरीब लोग हर वर्ग में होते हैं। और 5 जजों में से माननीय 3 जजों ने इसके पक्ष में अपनी बात कही है। और इसकी शर्तें आपको पता ही है कि 100 वर्ग का आवासीय प्लॉट ना हो, 8 लाख रुपए से कम उनकी इनकम हो, 1000 वर्ग फुट या उससे ज्यादा का उनका आवासीय फ्लैट नहीं होना चाहिए और 5 एकड़ से ज्यादा एग्रीकल्चर लैंड उनके पास नहीं होनी चाहिए। ये उसकी शर्तें हैं, इसमें बहुत लोग शामिल होते हैं। और EWS में भी ऐसा नहीं है कि जो EWS में जो भी होता है वो सबका सिलेक्शन हो ही जाएगा, क्योंकि EWS की भी संख्या ज्यादा है, पदों की संख्या कम होती है। तो EWS में जो बच्चे पढ़ने में होशियार होंगे उन्हीं का चयन हो पाया करेगा।
सर, मैं आपसे ये भी पूछना चाहती हूँ कि जैसे ही जजमेंट आई जिसमें 3 जजेस ने अपहोल्ड किया है रिजर्वेशन को, कांग्रेस लीडर उदित राज ने एक ट्वीट किया है जिसमें उन्होंने हिंदी और इंग्लिश में ये कहा है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट कास्टिस्ट है। तो ये किस तरह की पॉलिटिक्स खेली जा रही है जहां पे अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट को भी उनकी जजमेंट पे नाम बुलाए जा रहे हैं?
ये सो कॉल्ड जो दलित नेता हैं, इनको भ्रम है। अगर ये अभी भारतीय जनता पार्टी से MP थे, इनकी टिकट रहती दिल्ली वाली, तो ये इस प्रकार का बयान नहीं देते, क्योंकि सिटिंग MP थे बीजेपी से और उनको लड़ाया गया था 14 में, 19 में उनकी टिकट काटी गई। तो ये उनकी व्यक्तिगत खुंदस है। मैं और माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट पर इस प्रकार की गई टिप्पणी डेमोक्रेसी को कमजोर करती है। हमारे यहाँ संविधान में जिन बाबा साहब भीमराव अम्बेडकर को उदित राज जी और हम सभी लोग बहुत ज्यादा मानते हैं, उन्होंने उनके द्वारा, उनके सहयोगी द्वारा लिखित संविधान में हमारी सबकी लक्ष्मण रेखाएं हैं। कार्यपालिका, विधायिका और न्यायपालिका के अधिकार और कर्तव्य बहुत स्पष्ट हैं, और बहुमत के साथ आए हुए इस फैसले पर इतनी प्रतिकूल टिप्पणी करना डेमोक्रेसी के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। ये वो लोग हैं जिनका लोकतंत्र में विश्वास नहीं है, जिनका भीड़ तंत्र में विश्वास है।
बिल्कुल। जैसे आपने ये बात कही, मैं आपसे एक सवाल और करना चाहती हूँ। जो गवर्नमेंट की जो ये आई है, इसमें जस्टिस त्रिवेदी, जस्टिस महेश्वरी ने जो जजमेंट दी है, इसमें बहुत बहुत क्लियरली इन लोगों ने कहा है कि हमें ये रिजर्वेशन आज चाहिए 75 इयर्स के बाद, कल हम इसको रिव्यू कर सकते हैं।
हाँ, हमारे संविधान में भी इस प्रकार की थी कि ये शुरू में 10-20 सालों के लिए था, और जब पार्लियामेंट महसूस करती है कि इसको और आगे रहना है, तो उसके लिए हर बार लाया जाता है और उसको बहुमत के साथ वो होता है। तो मैं तो चाहता हूँ कोई दिन ऐसा आए जब दलित और पिछड़े अपने हक और हुकूक पा लें और इतने योग्य हो जाएं कि वो सामान्य सीटों पर भी आने लगे, तब कुछ हो सकता है। लेकिन फिलहाल मुझे लगता है कि आरक्षण की महती आवश्यकता है।
जी, मैं आखिरी सवाल आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ। जिस तरह से आपने कहा कि हमारी डेमोक्रेसी वीकन होती है अगर ऐसी बातें बोली जाएं, क्या उदित राज और कांग्रेस को ये नहीं पता कि जिस तरह की वो स्टेटमेंट्स दे रहे हैं जजमेंट पे सुप्रीम कोर्ट की, ये कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट भी है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को कास्टिस्ट बुलाना उनकी जजमेंट पे, और उसके बाद वोट बैंक पॉलिटिक्स सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट्स के साथ भी अब खेलना?
मेरा अपना अनुमान और अंदाज है कि निश्चित तौर से कुछ लोग या तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट सीधे ही इसको संज्ञान में लेगी, इस टिप्पणी को, और नहीं तो मुझे लगता है कि ढेर सारी याचिकाएं भी होंगी उनके इस बयान पर, जिसपे कंटेम्प्ट के बारे में निश्चित, कंटेम्प्ट तो चलो माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट खुद ही संज्ञान में ले सकता है, लेकिन उनके इस बयान पर, उनके इस स्टेटमेंट पर, बल्कि देश तोड़ने वाला ये स्टेटमेंट है, ये सामाजिक एकता को तोड़ने वाला है, भाईचारा को तोड़ने वाला है, सद्भाव को तोड़ने वाला है। कोई ना कोई PIL में भी जाएगा, ऐसा मेरा अंदाज है। फिर माननीय अदालत तय करेगी कि उनका ये बयान अपराध की किस सीमा तक आता है।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। हमारे साथ बनने के लिए धन्यवाद बघेल साहब। और ये हम देखना चाहते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट की ये जजमेंट जो अपहोल्ड करती है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के 103rd अमेंडमेंट को, हाउ दिस इज गोइंग टू गो फॉरवर्ड। वी थैंक यू टू द मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट ऑफ लॉ एंड जस्टिस फॉर बीइंग विद अस। Viewers, the breaking news that's coming in, and I want to first go across to that and get in our guests and panelists on it. The Supreme Court today upholds the constitutional amendment of the 103rd amendment to the constitution, and Justice Pardiwala says reservation should not continue for an indefinite time so that it's not there for a vested interest, but he also upholds the EWS amendment. We've also seen the words of Justice Trivedi, who says it cannot be said that the age-old caste system led to introduction of reservations. As we continue staying with the story after a short break, we'll also go across to words coming in from the Congress on a Supreme Court constitution bed judgment. Stay on with us.
Supreme Court will pronounce its verdict today on whether the petition filed against Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren alleging money laundering through shell companies and obtaining mining lease are maintainable or not. Supreme Court bench of Justice Sudhanshu Dhulia and Dinesh Maheshwari are set to pronounce the verdict. Conman Sukesh Chandrasekhar has shot off another letter to Delhi LG alleging that he has been receiving threats on behalf of now imprisoned Minister Satyendra Jain and DG Prison Sandeep Goyal, who's been transferred. In earlier two letters, Sukesh had claimed that Arvind Kejriwal promised a Rajya Sabha seat in lieu of 50 crore rupees. A five-judge bench of the Supreme Court led by Chief Justice of India UU Lalit is scheduled to pronounce judgment on the challenge to the validity of the 103rd constitutional amendment, which provides 10% reservation in government jobs and educational institutions to the economically weaker sections of society, but excludes the poorest of poor among scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and other backward classes from its ambit. After the ED issued fresh summons to Karnataka Congress State Chief DK Shivakumar, asking him to appear before it on November 7th, which is today, in connection with the ongoing money laundering case, the Karnataka's Congress State Chief has stated that he will not be attending, he will not be going for the quizzing in connection with the scam, and that he would be attending a birthday party of his party worker instead. Delhi woke up to a lingering smoke covering its sky, with the overall AQI under the very poor category at 326. Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai will chair a high-level meet to discuss new directions by Centre's Air Quality Panel about revoking curbs imposed under the final stage of the Graded Response Action Plan.
The RSS holding a rally in Cuddalore in Tamil Nadu after the massive face-off between the state government and the RSS. The BJP that has won 3 out of the 7 seats in the by-polls today. The Prime Minister in Bhavnagar is not just going to be speaking to the people there, he's attending that mass marriage.
Team of Kamrup District Police in Assam, led by officer in charge of Chiagaon Police Station, busted fake Indian currency racket and apprehended.
There's breaking news coming in from the top court, where now there is relief for Hemant Soren, Jharkhand Chief Minister. The Supreme Court allows the appeal of the Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren and the state government. This is against the Jharkhand High Court order, which had accepted the maintainability of a PIL in connection with shell companies related to Soren allegedly and his associates. I'm going to put it